Winchester, good evening. It's Visual Radio Live. On Thursday, the memory's rough, April 17th. It's a month after St. Paddy's Day. April 17th, 2014. The views and opinions on Visual Radio are those of the host and his guests, Frank Delestrito, leland Stein, and maybe Buzzy Linhart, who knows, but not necessarily the views of the Board of Directors, staff, management of WinCam, people of Winchester, planet Earth, and all known universes. And we're here, Leland. Thank you, Sean O'Brien, for helping with the technical, the lighting, and the audio, and here we are. Welcome to, have you been here?
No, my first time.
Isn't it great?
Yeah, it is. I'll have to come more often.
Now, have you gone up to the Heights to Arlington studio?
Yes, I have, yeah.
Jeff Monroe?
Yeah. Yep, and they've done a lot of things at the Regent Theater and captured some of our events over there.
Excellent, because I just joined Reading Cable today.
You did?
Some of these stations are now getting hip and allowing outsiders to come in. And why do I join? Because I bicycle the show, they call it. So I've got like 24 stations.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask you that.
Tonight we're on live, which means we're in Winchester on Comcast and Verizon, but Verizon does contiguous channels. So Arlington might be getting this feed on Verizon.
Okay.
4 or 5 other towns on the Verizon network get the feed. But we're going to talk a lot of fun stuff tonight. I brought the illustrated Dracula, not for Leland, but for Frank Delestrito. He's a Bela Lugosi biographer.
Okay.
But for Leland, I brought a bunch of Hendrix books to look at. And I'm going to tell you, did you ever see The Final Days of Hendrix?
That one doesn't look familiar.
Go to a library and see if you can call it up. There's only 2 copies I know in the library system in Massachusetts. One's at like MIT library, and they won't let it out. Springfield, so I don't know if it was Woburn or Stoneham got it for me from Springfield. They shipped it out, and I read it. Then I found 2 copies. It's very rare on eBay.
Okay.
So I've got 2. Now, it's got the coroner's report of Jimi Hendrix in here. Tony Brown was amazing. He's gone. Yeah. They're all gone. Monica Danneman's gone.
Chris Welch.
He's gone?
I believe he is, yeah.
Wow. This book is so valuable because he interviewed Monica Danneman at length, even though she was a compulsive liar.
Well, that's how my dad had a publishing company, and Monica actually came to him with her manuscript.
Really?
Way back when.
What was the company?
And my older Stein and Day Publishers.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. One of their bestsellers was Elia Kazan became a writer after he was a director, and The Arrangement was a #1 bestseller. That was Stein and Day.
Great.
But anyway, my older brothers befriended her, and the book was never published until much, much later.
Oh, but it actually came out.
Yeah. A version of it did. So that had some of the stuff, I guess, that ended up in here. And I remember seeing the coroner's report and so forth. But he's still alive, so what does it matter, you know?
Jimmy?
Yeah.
I think Jim Morrison might be, but Hendrix and even Joplin, as the days go on, we interviewed Tappy Wright, the road manager.
Yeah.
And in his book, he's saying that Jimmy was murdered.
Yeah.
Do you know Buzzy Linhart?
Buzzy Linhart was on the some of the sessions with Hendrix, the Cry of Love album.
He was on one song called Driftin'.
Yeah.
And he's on Like a Rolling Stone with Al Cooper. Mm-hmm. So I interviewed Al Cooper on the show, right?
Yeah.
You know, he lives around here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So I wrote him an email. I said, Al, I've got this great, you, Jimi Hendrix, Buzzy Linhart, Noel Redding. I want to send it to you. He goes, I had a copy. I threw it away. Noel Redding was out of tune. You're on a record with Jimi Hendrix.
Sounds like Al Cooper, right?
It's great. Great, Al. We love you, Al. But still, you're the only guy in the world who would throw away a Jimi Hendrix recording that you're on.
Yeah, I invited him when we had a Hendrix film at the Regent to come, and he said, yeah, I'd like to do that. And he goes, okay, well, I'll put you on the guest list. He said, great. And when I show up, you'll know me because I'm the guy who kind of looks like Al Cooper.
Bring him to the Alice Cooper show.
Yeah.
Say Al Cooper to introduce movie.
That's right. So, yeah, we can talk about that because that's one of the things we do over at the Regent Theater. And film and live stuff.
From the publicist that Alice Cooper has a new movie. What's the movie?
It's called Super Duper Alice Cooper. And they're billing it as a doc opera. So it's half documentary, half rock opera, but it's basically, a lot of archival footage of Alice Cooper, and like who knows what else, but it does sound like a lot of fun.
Now, we had Dick Wagner on the show many times.
Yeah.
Steve Hunter, the great duo.
Yeah.
back together on our show.
And your ears are still ringing, right?
Love those guys. You know, first met Dick Wagner September 1st, 1973 at the Rock and Roll Animals debut concert. Amazing stuff. So want me to tell you a little secret?
Sure.
You want secrets. I was 19 years old and I was out in the audience with a great unidirectional mic and a tape recorder, right? Dinky Dawson was the sound man.
Mm-hmm.
He stereo checked everything, and he wasn't doing it for the same reasons as me. I'm a collector. Dinky was just sound checking Steely Dan, The Byrds, Fleetwood Mac, whatever he was, because he wanted to reference tapes and see about the sound for each concert. So Wolfgang's Vault got a lot of Dinky's tapes.
Yeah.
But he held back September 1, 73. Then there's a fellow, a notable, who's co-writing the book with Dinky and I, and he had a source tape from Lennox. We went down to Connecticut and listened. It is amazing. The record we have from the 4 source tapes from Lennox,
Mm-hmm.
it's the transition from when Lou was doing the Velvet Underground stuff to really going all out with, you know, sure, Transformer came and the Tots Band and Moogie Klingman Band. He had a couple of bands. And he did a solo tour, solo acoustic. But this was the real transition of the Velvet Underground music to the Lou Reed solo. It was never the same after the first night. Maybe because they were all on Best Behavior.
Yeah. You know, I have a Velvet Underground story that's so long ago now, I don't know if it's true or not. But I tell you what, my family used to go to Martha's Vineyard a couple Augusts growing up in the 60s. And the Velvet Underground, I think around 1970, when they were splitting up or trying to dry out from their drug abuse, were on the vineyard. And they played a free concert on the wharf of
Whoa.
Edgartown Harbor. And
Firetown Harbor?
Edgartown Harbor
Edgartown.
at Martha's Vineyard. And I never had it 100% confirmed, but I was 14 years old at the time, and I remember, wow, that's so weird. They've got a chick drummer, you know? So that's to be confirmed.
Last week, my guest was Rob Fraboni, producer of the Beach Boys, you know, Rolling Stones, and et cetera, et cetera. So he was in high school, and he said that he saw Hendrix with Ike and Tina. I forgot that Hendrix was with Ike and Tina.
Yeah.
You got the Isley Brothers here, Sam Cooke. Now, you were the research director on this book. What does that mean?
Well, you know, it was an interesting project because it's a graphic novel, and this is 1995 when it was published. And I was a little bit ahead of the curve because graphic novels kind of came into vogue after the
Huge now.
millennium. Yeah. And
The Watchmen was kind of a big one around the time.
That's right. And since I was a Hendrix enthusiast, they wanted to get kind of like, okay, how can we tie in his lyrics with the visuals? And the artist, Bill Sienkiewicz, a very well-known graphic artist, illustrator. And so a lot of what I did was kind of try to find the songs and song lyrics to match what was going on at the time of his life. You know, fact-checking to an extent, even though the graphic novel format, you know, elements of fantasy kind of tied in there. So.
Now, when it says illustrated by Bill Sienkiewicz?
Sienkiewicz, right.
Sienkiewicz. Okay, did he do the ink as well as the drawing?
Right.
Wow, because a lot of them don't.
Yeah. Oh no, he did. In fact, we had the original color paint. They were really paintings.
Whoa.
And there's outtakes. You know, there's pages that didn't make it in and so forth. So yeah.
Now, when you say we, so are you friends with Martin Green?
Yes.
Is he a local?
He is. He's actually living in Concord now.
Oh, can we get him on the show sometime, maybe?
Absolutely.
Oh, good.
He'd love to be on.
Where's Bill?
Bill, he was in Connecticut. I'm not sure where he is now.
That's
I
awesome.
don't know if he's yeah.
Now, I have a good question. You must know that John McDermott's out in...
Sure, Newton.
Yeah.
Yep.
I wasn't going to say it, but you did. Great. So these tracks, which of course I love having it, but now have they all been released by Experience Hendrix, do you think?
They haven't actually, and this was one of the projects that was still in process when the family took over from Alan Douglas. So it was fully licensed and legal and all of that. Now, the CD you're referring to, Joe, that accompanied the book was Hendrix. Most of it was working out songs from Electric Ladyland at the Drake Hotel in New York City. So it's just Hendrix and electric guitar and singing. It's quite, and some of the stuff or some similar stuff has been out, but not all of the stuff that came on that disc.
My 49th show, and this is like show number 1005, okay? But show 49 back in 90.
Just missed 1,000, huh?
I lost track. I mean, doing the show every week live, without a staff, it's really, because you're doing location shoots and stuff everywhere, and it just gets it exists. The chronological order has to just be the date of the show. So, little Walter was on 49, and he pulls out a tape, and it's Little Richard in Revere Beach with Jimi Hendrix backing him up. The only known live concert ever. So I called John McDermott up. McDermott comes down to, you're going to love this story, down to Little Walter's house in Medford. He doesn't live in Medford anymore.
Yeah. Still around though, right?
Yeah, he's up north. He's a dear friend.
Yeah.
He's still doing his disc jockey thing. Should
Was
get
it
on his mailing
Little
list.
Walter's Time Machine?
Yeah,
Is
you're
that
going to have him at the Region.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Because
well, we had
he's-
Arnie Woo Woo Ginsburg a couple years back.
Wish I knew. Wow, from Maine.
Yeah, yep.
We know where these guys are. But Ron Della Chiesa called me today. He's
Boy.
going to be May 4th at our record expo signing his book. So we're going to interview him on location.
He's great too, wow.
So call McDermott up, email him, call him, and say, come down to Walter's house. You won't believe this. So he comes down with his notepad. And Walter had 2 tapes. He had the original tape. And you're going to love this. The tape he played the next day on WTBS, which is now NBR.
Right.
It was actually broadcast on NBR. So he played us the broadcast tape. And McDermott's there just like, that's Jimmy. That's Jimmy. I saw her standing there, opens it up. You know, Lucille. It's just amazing hearing Jimmy with...
And it's from Revere Beach?
and I even met the girl that Walter was dating at one of his record hops. He goes, Joe, this is the girl that was with me at the Hendrix show. He's got a beautiful picture of Jimmy with Little Richard. Or it's just Jimmy solo. It's gorgeous.
Oh, really?
Right?
Oh, wow.
So Stephen Roby writes Black Gold, puts the whole thing about my discovery, never mentions visual radio, which is, just give me a little credit.
Yeah.
I'm the guy, So I have Roby on. Buzzy Linhart and I are writing a book on Hendrix, which has been in the vaults, and we've been writing. We were going to do it with Stephen Roby.
Yeah.
So my idea, and it's totally my idea, backed up by emails, which Stephen Roby has and Buzzy Linhart has, right? I said, look, Bobby Hebb left Nashville, and Jimi Hendrix replaced him in the Jimmy Church Band. Did you know that?
No, I
Because
did
Jimmy Church was with, they all grew up, Jimmy Church, Bobby, and Billy Cox from Nashville. And then Billy met Jimmy in the Army.
Yeah.
So Billy comes back with Jimmy, and Bobby goes to New York to play with Sylvia Robinson, and Jimmy replaces him in the band. So I said, okay, guys, we're going to write a book on Hendrix in Nashville, Hendrix in New York with Jimmy James and the Blue Flames, and then the death of Hendrix. Because we have all these contacts that know stuff that's never been out. Roby runs with it. He runs with my idea and it becoming Jimi Hendrix.
Right.
And we got all the emails, and it's like, you know what? And I read it, and I had his co-author on. Because no hard feelings. I had the co-author on, but not him. But I said, Buzzy, our book just blows us away. He took our idea, and he didn't even do 1/10 of what it just cries for a book.
Yeah.
With the 70 Hendrix books, and I think I have them all, including Leland Stein's. See, I mean, really, no, I'm just a nut like you are on it.
Yeah.
I mean, aren't we all crazy on Jimmy?
Yeah. And it's, well, there's no one like him before or since.
And McDermott and Kramer are doing an amazing
Yeah.
job.
Yeah. And it's amazing, he's been gone for how many years now? 1970 is how many years ago? I can't even remember that long ago.
It's like 44?
Right. And he was around, the totality of his recorded output was 4 years.
But thanks to you, I have a great lecture with Murray Lerner.
Ah,
So Leland brought Murray Lerner to the Region,
that's right.
who directed these amazing movies, right, with all this footage. You could probably go in and re-edit them like a
Well, he
million
did the
times, right?
complete Isle of Wight, everything that happened at the Isle of Wight Festival in 1970.
I wonder if Kaleidoscope opened. Because it's Eddie Pumer,
Yeah.
a good friend of mine in England, and he was in Kaleidoscope, and then he produced records for Paul McCartney, like Band on the Run reissue.
And they were at the Isle of Wight.
They wrote the Isle of Wight theme, and they opened the Isle of Wight, but I'm not sure which year.
Yeah, because it could have been a different year.
It might have been 69. It might have been the very first Isle of Wight. Was this like the second one?
1970 was when Hendrix played there, because that was, 3 weeks before he died, one of the last major concerts he did.
And you know about the Arlington connection, can't he?
Yes.
Al Wilson.
Well, we in 2009 we did the 40th anniversary of Woodstock. A weekend at the Regent. We had Richie Havens.
God rest his soul.
And Al Wilson's mom, still living in Arlington, came to the event. We were very touched by it. She came so she could be part of it.
Is she still alive?
I don't know. She was, well into her 80s then, and this is a few years ago. But you know what? I was talking to, the Monotony Grill that opened, and Billy Lyons, long-term Arlingtonian.
I know Jimmy Lyons.
Yeah, I think it's that different Lyons. We were talking about all of the musicians, well-known musicians, entertainment people that have lived in Arlington, of all places, over time and currently. And I bet you know about this one, Marianne Faithfull.
I did. It slipped my mind.
And I was trying to remember when or why she lived in Arlington.
Marianne Faithfull was, well, she's a dear, sweet woman, and I've met her twice because of Jimmy Miller.
Yeah.
And right before Jimmy died, I saw her in Harvard Square. I got her book, and she signed it, and she goes, "Give my love to Jimmy." And he died 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later.
Oh, boy.
So he died October 22nd, 94. So I saw her September 94
Okay.
is the last time I saw her. Now, she was, I guess I can say it, because she was in rehab.
Yeah. That's
So
what I had heard, yeah.
She was rehabbing here with some friends of mine from the rock and roll scene, who I'll leave nameless, but nice people that I love, and she was rehabbing with them. So she was living at those towers near the wharf in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that?
No.
And then her boyfriend died, and I think she moved to Arlington after that.
Okay.
Now, someone else who lived in Arlington or Belmont was Sesnick, who managed the Velvet Underground.
Is that right?
What was his name? Steve Sesnick? The guy, the manager of the Velvet Underground.
Have you had Jay Reig on?
Huh?
Have you had Jay Reig? Jay Reig is a Velvet Underground Lou Reed scholar who lives in this area. His private collection is, he calls the 1968 Museum, and he's on the board of the Andy Warhol Museum.
Okay.
And you would have a great conversation with him.
Let's do it. Herb Reed, of course, the late Herb Reed. The living George Lay of the Thrillers.
And of course, I just was thinking about this the other day. Herb Reed's funeral was at the Regent Theater, and it was like, we get a call after Herb died, and we've done everything at the Regent, but we had never done a funeral before. And we literally had to take out a row of seats up front, because legally you have to have so much room for a casket to fit for the viewing. So, and in the lobby that day were Rex Traylor and Little Joe Cook together. And I just posted this picture of them holding hands in the Regent Theater lobby when we just heard, of course, this week that Little Joe Cook passed.
Well, you know that Rex Traylor was right here. He knew my friend Jojo Lane. We had a surprise party for Jojo. She's gone. Rex is gone. I mean, I've lost 6 people since January 10th. 6. Did you know Anderson Lynn Marr?
Yes. I did. I knew her from, actually, she was a counselor, a teacher at my son's after-school program in Arlington a few years ago, and then she brought the kids from the School of Rock to the Regent to do a performance. And then I was Facebook friends with her. It's like,
well, I was posting her bulletins because I do the Club Bohemia website.
Yeah.
Sweet kid. And Doug Mascott from WMWM Radio. Vinnie Kalishis from the Rat Days. John Kalishis' brother. I mean, this is all in the span of 6 weeks, people. So I couldn't go to the Herb Reed thing. I can't go to a lot of wakes.
Yeah. Well, the thing that was, amazing is when they called us up, it was like, okay, so you want to do a memorial service with songs? No, we want to do a full funeral. It was like, okay. I mean, it's on YouTube and stuff, but it was great music. And, what do you do when you have a theater and you have a funeral? You don't sell tickets. You don't know how many people are going to come. You open the doors and, you know, there could be 200, there could be 2,000.
What were they?
It was never totally full, but, you know, people kind of come and go.
Well, sure, like any kind of
yeah,
memorial.
And it worked out. I mean, it was not. There was a gentleman who flew down from Canada who's writing maybe it's finally published, the definitive book on doo-wop that was like 1 million pages long. He came down. I think the president of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was there that day.
What,
Little Richard was supposed to be there, but he's been in ill health. And
does he still live at the Hyatt in California, LA?
I don't know.
My clients flew me out back in '91.
Yeah.
And I knew he lived in the hotel.
Yeah.
And I'm in the elevator with him.
Oh boy.
Little Richard, can I have an autograph? Yeah, you're here for a few days. I'll see you. I never saw him again.
Yeah.
But I'm in the elevator with
really.
Little Richard, so that was cool.
What a memory, yeah.
And you never forget.
Yeah.
But he lived on the top, just like Paul Schaefer lived on the top of the Gramercy Park.
Yeah.
So Jimmy Miller and I would go to Gramercy Park, and Paul would always stop Jimmy. He knew him.
Yeah.
And these guys live in hotels. Well, why not?
Yeah.
You know, have a maid make your bed for you. It's great. So the region, Wormtown, you're wearing a Wormtown shirt. Now that's Worcester Rock. And I used to play Cersei's out there. It was so much fun.
Yeah. Well, I went to college in Worcester, Clark University. I grew up in New York, and that's when I was first here. And in the 70s, of course, Brian Goslow had one of the very first radio station programs on the whole punk rock. And I ended up having a radio show there as well. Speed Limit 91.3 was called at some time, Wormtown on the Rocks. And we worked with Ivan Lipton at the Worcester Center paperback booksmith, music smith, and we brought in the bootleg albums, the imports. We were like and this whole scene started building up there. And the term Wormtown was coined at the time during that era, and now it's like part of the culture and the lingo. I mean, there's a Wormtown ale you can go and get in your local pub now. So
I worked with the Blue Moon Band. They actually backed me up for a little while.
Love them. They were like the X of the East. If they had ever, gotten taken to the next level, what a phenomenal band.
Well, that was the problem. There was so many good bands around here. Dee Dee Stewart, Charlie Farron, go on and on down the list. And some got deals, some didn't. And Dee Dee and Charlie got deals, but the industry was like a merry-go-round.
Yeah.
Never realized respect what you have.
Yeah. Were you able to make it to the Robin Lane film when we premiered that at the Regent?
I'm a recluse.
Yeah. Well, we're going to show it again, but there's.
Will Robin be there?
She was there, and we're going to show it again. She'll be there the next time.
What's the next time?
We haven't confirmed it yet. It looks like June 6th.
Because, we've been negotiating with her to be on the show.
Oh, okay.
And one of our board members, Linda Doucette, wants to interview Robin Lane with me, or be part of it. So June 6th, huh?
Yeah.
I will be in touch with Robin.
And I've been coordinating stuff with Tim Jackson, who's the drummer from the Chartbusters.
He just befriended me.
Who's the filmmaker. And what you just said about all of these groups that were talented and putting out this great music, and some of them did get signed to major labels like Robin Lane, but that wasn't always the key. I mean, many times they got on a label, and then either the label failed or they didn't know what to do with them, and the marketing, and if the right person that didn't champion them to get there wasn't on the label, and they marketed, promo, everything was wrong. It's all part of that deal.
And saying deal, you know what they did wrong, and I'll tell you, because I've always been a firm believer in this. They should have put the demos out with the record albums. Private Lightning's demos were superior to the album. Robin Lane's demo had charm to it, and by the time they recorded it, she had already played the song 1 million times. So what they should have done was, when things go wrong, should have had the original on the flip, remixed maybe, but they should have had both versions, and maybe radio would have flipped it over and history would be different.
They've got, in the movie, I think they play one of the demo versions, and he spends a good amount of time showing them at the Rat with some of the other groups, really talk about that whole scene. And it's a great story. She was a child of Hollywood parents. her dad was Dean Martin's piano player.
No, her dad was Frank Sinatra's piano player.
Dean
and
Martin's.
then Dean Martin.
Oh, okay.
Because Frank did the original Everybody Loves Somebody. Did you know that? Google,
No.
go into YouTube and put Frank Sinatra, Everybody Loves Somebody, because you know who wrote it, right? Her dad.
Her
wrote
dad.
it. Yeah.
Right.
Why didn't she sing it?
Yeah. Oh.
Do they have it in the movie, Everybody Loves Somebody?
I think so.
And then Neil Young, of course.
Yeah.
Now, her dad was part of the Reprise regime, and then she's on this Reprise record with Neil Young. I thought that was very coincidental.
Yeah. I don't know whether that's explained in the film at all.
But everyone go out there and Google Frank Sinatra, Everybody Loves Somebody, because you know Dean did a cocktail version of it.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that? On
An
Evening with Dean
have
Martin.
heard that, yeah.
And then it was Jimmy Bowen, the producer. They put that whole thing with all of the choir or whatever, and that became Dean's trademark. Everything that he did. And I only do. What was that song? That followed up, right? All his songs Bowen started
Get
doing
this
that
guy out.
production of the Everybody Loves Somebody. They just kept cloning it, and Dean kept having hits with it. I love this stuff.
Yeah, well, it's a great story, and hopefully people who are interested can come out and see the film again. You know, he's still raising money to complete it, because with all of these music films, you know, it's the licensing part and you know, paying for the music licensing.
Just ask the
It's
Jimi
like-
Hendrix people.
or the Wrecking Crew film. You know,
I didn't know that.
do you know the Wrecking Crew film?
Oh yeah, I know of them. No, I don't know the film. I know
Yeah.
of Carol Kay,
Well,
separate from the publicist.
there's someone you should have on. If we've screened it twice. Denny Tedesco, who is the son of Tommy Tedesco.
Didn't know that. Wow.
His dad was dying more than 15 years ago, and Denny was a young filmmaker and saying, this story has to be told.
Sure.
And for the past 15, 17 years, he's been making this film and trying to get it out, but it has more music cues than any film in history. WreckingCrewFilm.com. Check it out. And the outtakes are unbelievable. He lists every song that the Wrecking... Joe, you tell people who the Wrecking Crew were.
Well, you know, when you listen to a Byrds record, if you listen to, I think the Easy Rider soundtrack, it's Roger McGuinn in a symphony orchestra. People don't get it. When McGuinn was on tour with the Byrds, the Wrecking Crew were making the records, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't actually the Byrds on the record.
Right, and the same thing with the Beach Boys. When Brian Wilson did Good Vibrations, he went into the studio with the Wrecking Crew.
One of the all-time greatest hits
Yeah.
that he spent forever on.
But it's just, I mean, these are the musicians, studio musicians in California that were on basically every hit record that was made in the 60s and early 70s. It's like over 1,000. You know, the Carpenters, Simon and Garfunkel. I mean, it goes on and on and on. But what a trip. And just go to the website. But the film, I'm trying to get him back here to show the film one more time.
Where's he from?
California.
Oh, okay.
And but his dad, Tommy Tedesco, was one of the Wrecking Crew guitarists, and also, just reading today, Glenn Campbell was part of the Wrecking Crew. I guess Billboard.com said he's finally been admitted to a Alzheimer's center.
I mean,
Sad news
we're at
there.
that point. We're at the tipping point where they're just falling,
Right.
and it's sad. You know, Tedesco and Pittman was the flip of a Phil Spector 45. Remember that?
There you go. And it's a wonderful tribute to his father, but the footage is unbelievable. You mentioned Carol Kay, the bass player, before, and her whole, she has a whole thing where she demonstrates the beat goes on, Sonny and Cher, how the song came to them, and how she created that whole doon, doon,
Of course.
doon,
Makes
doon,
sense.
doon, doon. Oh, so that's a
And you know where
Film.
Sonny Bono got his chops with Phil Spector.
yeah.
So it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So there's plenty
Now-
to talk about there.
Sounds of Silence, as you know, was a folk acoustic thing. Did Clive Davis put the Wrecking Crew behind that folk? Were they on the original Sounds of Silence?
I don't know specifically, but I believe so.
So it was after the fact. Simon and Garfunkel cut Sounds of Silence, and you can hear it on their first album, I think. And then the same exact track, Columbia Records, Clive Davis and whomever, went in I didn't know it was the Wrecking Crew, but it makes sense. It sounds like them.
Yeah, yeah.
And that wonderful, gorgeous Sounds of Silence made out of a folk demo.
Well, I have to, since you mentioned Simon and Garfunkel, you know, we had Art Garfunkel at the Regent Theater last December.
And I saw Paul Simon right before you had Art Garfunkel. Did you know that in New York?
No, and that was before this tour with
December
Sting that he
16th.
did. We had him early December, I believe,
Okay,
like
so
the
December
6th, 7th, and 8th, something
So you
like
had
that.
him first. Okay.
But the story is that a few years ago, Art lost his voice, and he was totally out of the picture, and he had a very slow recovery while he was getting treatment, and then he got to the point where his voice was getting stronger, so he was doing these kind of under-the-radar living room style concerts. So we had this intimate evening with Art Garfunkel, and meantime his voice coming back stronger and stronger. I befriended his manager. You'll love this, Joe. His manager, Mort Lewis, the same guy who managed Simon and Garfunkel 50 years ago when they started. He's 90 years old, and he's still managing Art Garfunkel.
That's awesome.
His first, when he started out in the business, he managed Dave Brubeck, who, you know, just passed away recently.
I didn't know Dave passed away.
Yeah, it was about the same. Well, he was 93. Mort's now 90.
And what was Little Joe, 93?
Also, speaking of Al Cooper, he was at the Blues Project or Blood, Sweat, and Tears. He managed some of those groups back then.
Oh.
The stories that this guy has is just unbelievable. And now I'm helping him get some arts coming back again this summer, and I just got him help to get them a gig at the Berkeley Performance Center. So he's going to be there in June at
And then he's gonna go to the
Mechanics Hall
Regent?
in Worcester. Nope, he's done the Regent. Now he wants to get right into the city. He's going to do the Academy of Music in Northampton, Mechanics Hall in Worcester, and then Berkeley Performance Center.
Now, my good friend Bernard Purdy, is going to
Great
be
drummer.
at the Mechanics Hall May 8th with the original Orpheus.
Oh, is that right?
Well, it's hard to say the original, because Harry Sandler, our friend,
Yeah.
who's been on Visual Radio, is an original Orpheus, but this is the original Orpheus studio band. So there's two original Orpheuses out there. But Bernard Purdy and Bruce Arnold and Les
Okay.
Arnold. So we have a videotape of them out at the Bull Run. That horrible storm, remember that storm?
I remember seeing stuff about that.
I drove in that horrible storm because Bernard's a dear friend, and he said he would do an interview. And he produced my friend Bobby Hebb. So I wanted to get that all on tape. I reunited Bobby and Bernard back in the early 2000s. They went off to New York and cut an album together.
So now it's Orpheus that's playing Mechanics Hall?
Yeah.
Is that part of a bigger bill?
I don't know. I don't think
Wow.
so. But it's May 8th,
Wow.
which I'll be here because it's my birthday. And I'll be here on Visual Radio, May 8th.
You're turning 29 again, John.
I am turning 30 plus 2. 30 times 2.
Yeah.
So
There you go.
I was at Burger King, and I said like, oh, how much for the 50-cent coffee? It's like they get seniors. I'm not a senior yet. It's funny, but at IHOP, if you're 55, you're a senior.
I'm there, Joe, believe it or
So
not.
you can take the family to IHOP, and you can get the senior discount on Wednesdays at 4:00. It's good things to know, because if you're gonna be double 30, you want to get all the perks you can.
Hey, I don't look 57, do I?
I didn't think you were 50. You look like you're in your 40s.
Oh, well,
I don't
you
look a
know,
day over
all this
57.
stuff keeps me young, you know.
Sev Grossman, Boom Boom Band, rock and roll keeps you young.
There you go. I decided last year that it's okay to turn a year younger with each birthday now. You know, no one said you can't.
No, how old was Little Joe, do you think? 93?
I just read he was low, yeah, in his 90s.
I just guessed. I mean, he's a dear friend. I have a birthday party of his on tape. I don't think we've ever broadcasted. He had me come out and tape his birthday party.
Wow.
So he was on the show. We've got more Boston rock and roll, Leland, and now you're part of the lore, than any other video program. We must have 100 hours of Boston music taped. Dee Dee Stewart, Charlie Farron. You know, think about it, right?
Oh boy,
John
goes
Butcher
on and on.
performances. I mean, we just do it. You just keep it going.
You did a few. You lugged your camera to a couple of Regent things in recent years, right?
In recent years, show number 9, which was 1995, I did the Regent. Was it a Morgan Hugh thing with Robin Farron?
Well, wait a minute. You sure 1995 or 2005?
95.
Because we took things over in 2001, 2002.
But Richie Stavros was there in the 90s,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was 95.
Oh, okay.
Well, I got a nugget for you. I used to go to St. Agnes.
Yeah.
So I think I was in 5th or 6th grade, and there was a big poster at the Regent. Do you know what it said? Live, Little Anthony and the Imperials.
Who has that poster?
I start with it's in here. It's
Yeah.
definitely here,
Oh,
but
wow.
what was I? Had to
You
be
know Mitch
66.
Diamond?
Huh?
You know
Yeah,
Mitch
of
Diamond?
course.
If anyone would have it or know about it.
I just talked to him yesterday.
Yeah.
Mitch was my salesman at Rounder. Did you work at Rounder?
I did. I was at Rounder in the 1990s.
That was a question I had for you.
That's right. But, wow. So, the Regent turns 100th anniversary in 2016, and
You gotta
I
see
got to
about that
start
poster.
getting those kind of recollections.
Okay, so
You
now
know-
you know. Little Anthony played there in the 60s.
Well,
Who would have thunk it?
When you were a student at St. Agnes.
I
Who
was at
thought
St.
that?
Agnes from 3rd grade to 9th grade, and then I
So you could
had enough of the nuns in Arlington High.
So you could pinpoint the year more or less that
65, 66.
Little Anthony played at the Regent.
It could be as early as 64, but I think it's more like 65. I would say 66.
Yeah.
Now, Little Walter would be good to ask. Do you
Yeah.
know Joe Tortelli, one of my hosts? Lives in Arlington. Sure, he goes to the
Okay.
regional lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've met
I
him.
do. Yeah, I've met Joe. Sure.
National writer. So he went to St. Agnes.
So he
too.
does this show as well.
Yeah, he's one of my co-hosts. And Tontaleo.
Yeah.
You must know Tontaleo.
Yeah.
She hasn't co-hosted in a while, but yeah, we have
Boy.
our director. We actually have a staff, but I do so many of these on a Thursday. It's impossible to get the staff all the time. I send the memo out,
I
But no one's
admire
a
you. You
maniac.
like doing the whole thing.
Don't you love it?
Yeah, it's great.
I call it do-it-yourself access. We did do-it-yourself records. No, so at Rounder, what did you do?
Well, originally, I was managing an independent record store called Rocket Records, and then it was funny because I used to buy records from Rounder for the store, and then
love
I
Rocket.
knew people there. I started.
Were they 2 Rockets?
There was one in Saugus, and then we opened the store in Nashua, New Hampshire.
I had lunch at IHOP yesterday near the old Rocket.
Oh, okay, yep.
How's that for
May
cosmic?
Rest in peace. So I started out doing marketing for the mail order catalog. It's funny, that's the other thing I almost wore today, the Record Roundup, which was really like a music magazine where we had, Cub Coda used to write for the Record Roundup. Christine Ullman wrote for the Record Roundup.
Then Cub went to allmusic.com.
Ah, that's right. And so first part of the 90s, that's what I did, and then they merged the mail order division into the company as a whole, and then I took over Chris Cody's position, which was export manager, which we call director of international sales, which
I love
sounded
it.
great. The best part of that job was getting to go to meet him once a year.
Did you really?
And
I am jealous. I'm not a jealous person. I am jealous of Leland now.
Yeah.
Me dem.
Meedem, yep. So which is, of course, where the Cannes Film Festival is, but a little colder time of year in January rather than March.
All I have of Me Dem is everyone else's stories of it, but
Yeah.
it's legendary.
Yeah, well,
And you went in the good days.
Well, it was the late 90s when I was going there, and
Oh.
it was fun. It was fun. I mean, to get the company to pay for you to go to the south of France, you can't beat that. So
And he visited the Rolling Stones doing their Exile on Main Street reunion.
that
If
wasn't true. We could say that, but it's not true.
I had Robert Greenfield on by phone. Unless he was in studio? I don't know. I think he was on phone. The Exile on Main Street guy. And then Bill Janovitz.
Yeah.
So Bill lives in Arlington, I think.
Lexington, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does he play the region?
He has before. Yeah.
So we're going down the list here with Sesnick and, Arthur Orfanos, the Mood. I think I taped him at the region. But it was 95, and I have a whole tape of the region in 95.
But you were there for some of the stuff we did in the
Carl
2000.
Palmer.
Vanilla Fudge, maybe?
Oh, I got Vanilla Fudge on tape.
Yeah.
But I never got the interview with them. I went out to TCAN.
Yeah.
And then they were too tired to do the interview. Mark Stein and I are in touch. He's got his book.
Yeah.
But, it's just...
So
how can you do it all?
Vanilla Fudge, we did their farewell tour, right? 2 years later, they call us up and we're touring again, so we're going to do another farewell tour,
Yeah, well, Cher just played here April 9th.
Yeah,
and
right.
She's done
how many times
farewell-
has she retired? So Carmen,
Chloe.
I was talking to Carmen Apice, right? of course, his thing is that he taught John Bonham how to drum because Led Zeppelin opened for Vanilla Fudge. But
Which
anyway,
is actually plausible
yeah.
in a way.
Well, he's a great storyteller and, believable.
be.
So I was talking to him, and this last time they played, the thing was they were playing their self-titled first album in its entirety for the first time, which was a cool thing, and they did a great job. And talking to him afterwards, he goes, we just did this in our home turf in Long Island, and we got through like the first few songs, and all of a sudden someone in the audience yells, "Flip it over!"
Wow.
And which brings us to vinyl, right?
Which has come back.
Yeah.
Well, you're invited on May 4th to the Holiday Inn in Denham for this record expo. Have you ever been?
No, I'm
It's
afraid to go.
It's 40 years old.
The one in Dedham.
Yeah, well, it used to be at the SAC 57. Did you ever go to those?
I know that I did years
John
and years
Hancock.
ago.
So it's the same show. It's Bert and Sheila. And we got Rondella Chiesa, the Frank Sinatra expert.
May 4th.
Stephen Davis should be there. I'm not supposed to say these things. Guest of Visual Radio. He wrote Jim Morrison and Bob Marley. You must know him.
Yeah.
Stone's book.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So Stephen Davis should be there, but that's a secret. Rondella Chiesa will be there. Stephen Lee Bieber, the author of the CBGBs, Heebie-Jeebies at CBGBs.
Wow.
We could put all these authors in the region, like just line up all the book authors.
By the way, you just reminded me, too, another thing we have coming up in June is the premiere of the Tom Rush film, No Regrets. And Tom Rush is going to come and do a Q&A, and I guess I can't say whether he's going to perform or not because of another gig. But anyway, he will be there for a Q&A and a film premiere, and that's going to be fun. That's in the end of June.
I interviewed him years ago,
Yeah.
and we got a 2-camera shoot of the Sanders Theater.
Oh, wonderful.
Never played.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that must be wonderful.
It
Wonderful.
is, and he was a great guest. So I should pull out that old tape, right?
You should. That would be great. And getting back to vinyl, I have a problem, Joe. I have a tremendous LP vinyl collection. I have a kid in college. I have no money. I could be selling my records. I can't. I love them too much. What do you do?
Rondella Chiesa is actually selling his vinyl. He goes, Joe, he said it to me on the phone today, I got CDs, I'm going to sell the vinyl, and I got doubles on a lot of it. But you know what? How long can you hold on to all this stuff? So I'm starting to sell mine too, because, it's a huge asset.
Oh, and also if you ever have to move, it's always like the worst thing is to move an LP collection. But it's so great the way, it never totally went away, but now it's like it's back and strong. You got Record Store Day this Saturday.
Oh, it's
an
a
annual
Saturday.
event.
And we're going to tell you a secret, people. You got to get out early for Record Store Day because there's all sorts of free stuff. And we can always talk about free stuff in the show.
You know what? Another thing, if you don't mind, that I want to mention that I'm involved with now is
Only if it's free.
The Brad Delp Foundation. And I was asked to be on the board of advisors, and we are now putting together. We're going to release a vinyl single, and we're going to do a fundraising event for the Brad Delp Foundation at the region as well. But it's a song that it's a double-side single on vinyl.
Brian Mace.
This is Steve Baker, his keyboard player. They did a project, and the song is called Sunday in the Dark, and it's a song that Brad Delp wrote about watching the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show 50 years ago growing up, and it's backed with a song called Tuesday, so we call it 2 days a week.
Now, Tuesday is Brad Delp, right?
Tuesday's Brad Delp.
I was at the recording session.
You were?
I was the manager of the studio.
And you know what that song is about?
I was there.
Right, so you know that he wrote that the morning after John Lennon was shot.
I didn't know
Tuesday.
that.
Yeah. But you were there.
I was
great.
living at Mission Control, so I'm like all bleary-eyed, and they're all recording. David Brown was producing, the guitarist from Billy Joel.
Wow.
Okay. Bernard Purdy.
We might have to add to the liner notes now.
Okay,
Get your
so
recollection.
I'm at Mission Control in Westford, Mass., which was the old, I forget the name of it, Sanctuary.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where Gary Shane recorded. So I'm working there. I'm the studio manager. New Kids on the Block, right? I go downstairs. It's like 10 in the morning, and I go, Brad, you know what's scary? He goes, what? Hearing one of my favorite singers singing while I'm waking up. He goes, you know what's scary, Joe? I said, what? He goes, being that singer and hearing yourself sing at this hour in the morning. It was great.
Oh.
What a sweet guy.
Oh, amazing.
So, there were 3 songs, and I have a copy of them somewhere in my house, but I could never find them because, we have so much stuff.
Well,
Without a secretary, how do you find the stuff?
the Sunday in the Dark tape, which is amazing. Some people have heard it and said, this sounds more like McCartney than McCartney.
Well,
kind
that was Brad. You could see he had an amazing voice.
It was a cassette tape that was lost, and there was some kind of a flood in Steve Baker's basement, and they were cleaning up the flood, and the guy goes, "What's this tape?" They had it cleaned up, and that's what we're putting out in June.
Is Steve Baker on Facebook?
No.
I
but
want
his
to
wife
interview him.
is.
I want to interview him. You know why? He was at the Beatles show with Bobby Hebb, August of 1966. Brad was there. But I believe it was Steve. He was from Beetlejuice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was at because I talked to Brad. I'm the one who told Brad that JoJo Lane passed away. You know JoJo? She was Denny Lane's wife from Wings. So Brad dated her back in the day up in Danvers. They were all at Danvers High. So he goes, "I got your email." He goes, "I only knew because of you." And he made at the Regent. I saw Beetlejuice. I was hanging out with you and Richie.
Yeah.
And Brad called me over. I had to wait for him. And it was March. No, it wasn't March. It was like February or January. So I'm at the IBS conference in New York, the college radio thing. And one of the executives comes out and says, "Joe, did you know Brad Delp?" I said, "Did I know Brad Delp? I was with him last month at the Regent."
Yeah.
He died. I'm in New York, and that's how I found out.
Yeah. Well, it was a very, and our sound guy, Todd Windmill at the time, who's now the mixes sound for the Conan O'Brien show out on the West Coast. He was very, very good friends with Brad Delp, and of course we had them at the Regent Theater, Beetlejuice, countless times. But we can connect you with Steve Baker, get you on with him.
We got to do our movie thing now, which is the Fast and the Furious from the 60s.
Okay.
Did you know there was another Fast and the Furious? I didn't. But I leave it up to Frank. Now he can hear us through the mics.
Okay.
Joe, Frank Illustrator talking about movies.
The Fast and the Furious. I want you to say hi to Leland Stein.
Leland, how you doing?
I'm very well, very well. Pleasure to meet you.
You're on a great show. What does Leland do to make him worthy of your being a guest of it?
Well, he was director of research of the book Voodoo Child, the illustrated legend of Jimi Hendrix.
All right.
He runs a movie theater where they have great films that you would love. And Frank is coming up. I got to introduce you guys. He's coming up in June. He's the author of Vampire Over London, Bela Lugosi biographer.
Oh, well, maybe we can have him over and we'll show some films at the same time.
Want to do that, Frank?
Yeah, why not?
Do some Bela Lugosi films and have you talk.
Woo!
This guy's got 3 books out, and he's just Frank, you're just amazing. So we're showing Lugosi right now from the illustrated Dracula.
Okay.
Bram Stoker, it says. Have you ever seen the illustrated Dracula?
I'm ashamed to say I have not. I have seen books of. I've seen copies of the novel that are illustrated, but I don't know if I've seen the one you're looking at.
This is great. It's Dracula with all the Lugosi pictures in it.
Wow.
So it's just totally amazing.
You know, we've shown
How
some...
old a book is that?
Yeah.
I don't know, but Leland's father owned Stein and Day. Did you know that publisher?
Well, years ago, in this small publisher in New York in the 60s, but we've shown a few of the old silent films with live accompaniment, and one was a film called Vampire with a Y. Do you know that one? Wow.
I do. I don't know if we're talking about the same one. There's a Danish one, 1932, which isn't silent, but might as well be because there's so little sound in it.
Yeah, yeah.
Then there's one of the silent area that one of the things Dracula did was put vampire, the meaning of vampire, back to its original definition. In the 1920s, before Dracula came out, if you said vampire to a person, they would assume that you were talking about a femme fatale. So I don't know which movie you're talking about.
Yeah.
But you're probably talking about the Danish one, which isn't silent, but might as well because there's almost no talking in it.
Right. Yeah.
This book is
Wonderful
75.
film.
Okay. No, the reason I asked is there was actually a book put out in 1931 when Dracula came out. Bill, if you had that, you'd be sitting on something that would be worth at least $500, maybe more, depending on its condition.
And it's called The Illustrated Dracula?
I think it's just Dracula by Bram Stoker, but there's illustrations of Bela Lugosi in it that came out in conjunction with the movie.
Wow.
Anytime. I guess we better talk about the Fast and the Furious.
We got 4 minutes.
4 minutes. So I'll talk fast and I'll try not to be furious. Let's see. Fast and Furious came out in February 1955. It is one of the first movies made by Roger Corman, who is the producer. And as a rule of thumb, you can take the days of filming of Roger Corman movies and multiply it by 10,000, and that's the budget. So this, nobody knows the exact budget of this, but it was filmed in less than 10 days, and it cost less than $100,000. And I'd never seen this movie before you asked me to talk about it. I watched it last night, and I wasn't expecting much because a lot of Roger Corman's very early movies are pretty crude. They're made for the drive-in crowd, a non-discriminating audience. This is not a bad movie at all. Incidentally, it has no relation to the 2001 Fast and Furious that put Vin Diesel and Paul Walker on the map, though I understand they did actually purchase the title. It's always dicey in copyrights how much claim you have to a title. Though they did pay some money to use the title, but there's nothing like it. The 2001 movie is an undercover cop in the street racing culture of L.A., and this is an innocent man on the lam movie. A guy who's wrongly accused of murder, escaped from prison, and in his attempts to get to Mexico, he winds up racing a Jaguar in a cross-state race in California, hoping to get across the Mexican border. You will find that out in the first few minutes, so I haven't spoiled anything for you. This is the first film released by the company that would soon become American International Pictures.
Wow.
And again, I wasn't expecting much because their early movies tend to be kind of crude, but this has a certain slickness about it, and I think we owe that to John Ireland, who is both the star and the co-director. John Ireland, and I'm surprised at the cast of this movie because American International and Corman, were picking up actors without much renown at the time, and they have John Ireland, who was he was an A-list supporting actor of the 1950s. I think he had a good role in Spartacus a few years later, and a couple of years after this movie, he played Johnny Ringo, shot down by Kirk Douglas's Doc Holliday in Gunfight at the Oak Corral. He's near the peak of his career, and his co-star in this is Dorothy Malone, who is away from an Oscar.
How long away from an Oscar?
About a year away. I think the next year is when she appears in Written on the Wind and gets the Best Supporting Actress Oscar. And she's been on the ascent. She was in movies from the 40s when she was quite young. She's only 30 years old in this movie, and she's been on the ascent. And she's near the peak of her career. And they both wind up in this low budget, filmed on the order of a week movie, and they bring some real class to it, and John Ireland's direction, along with Edward Sampson, who's the other co-director, is spot on. So without much budget and without much time, and using stock footage of auto races, they pull it off.
And Roger Corman wrote it.
Excuse me?
Roger Corman co-wrote it?
No, Corman was the producer.
I thought on Wikipedia it said he co-wrote it. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe he did.
You can't always believe what you read in
no,
Wikipedia.
he plays.
That's correct.
Right. That's it?
No, that's correct, that you can't always believe Wikipedia.
Okay. No, I'm a big fan of Wikipedia, so if they say it, I'd take them over me, but I didn't know that. And
another minute.
One more minute. And you have to watch really carefully because you won't see him very, very easily. But he is in the movie.
Who, Corman?
Corman plays a race car driver.
Wow.
And it's only because, with the budget constraints, he probably came for free.
I love it.
But you will have to look really close, if at all, to see him. And again, with like a lot of these public domain movies, there are numerous versions available. So I'm not sure he's in all of them because if you sneeze, you won't see him. Two other actors in this: Bruno Visota, who's a short, fat guy, and when you see him, you say, "Yeah, I've seen him before." He will become a Corman stock company player. Corman would use the same actors over and over again, and Bruno Visota, who's a short, heavy-set guy with a mustache, a bit of not a comical figure in this movie, but in general a comical figure. This is his first movie with Corman, and this is really where Corman starts building the stock company.
And that's our show for tonight.
Okay, I'll talk to you next week. Put me in touch with Leland so we can talk about if I can do something while I'm up there.
Absolutely.
Good to meet you.
And that's Frank Delestrito. The views and opinions are ours. Did you have fun?
Absolutely. Quickest hour in the world, right?
Like the Oracle in the Matrix said, our time is up. Thank you, Winchester. Thank you, Sean O'Brien. Thank you, Dave Gauthier. Thank you, everyone here at WinCam. See you around. Reeling is up next. Reeling is a show from Maltin.